This is how a Thrive sculpture is created by GChris. Sculpture title: Envision Earth Embraced, Sustained, and Thriving. Sculpture concept. Sculpture often begins with concept embodied in title and message, and ultimately in sculpture design and execution. Concept for this sculpture is that we should envision Earth embraced if we are to sustain ourselves and Earth, and if all of us and Earth are to thrive for all time. This sculpture starts as a Corel Draw drawing, worked until concept is effectuated, design is best, size and proportions are best, and execution strategy is likely feasible. Sculpture execution starts with a 3-foot by 8-foot sheet of 5/64" copper plate. Always nice if you can start in a beautiful setting. 1885 era restored barn and Thrive Park, including Pikes Peak Bluff. Copper plate is marked with marker pen and taped for initial cut from which parts of sculpture will be cut. Tape protects copper during cutting. Copper plate is cut with jigsaw with metal cutting blade. This cut can be fairly rough since sculpture pieces are well within the boundaries. Moved cut copper plate into workshop to prepare for marking for cuts. Note previous sculpture, no species, is cut from the same copper plate. First marking, using a jerry-rigged protractor, is outside circumference, about 36 inches, of outer image. That image will be like a sliver of moon. Second marking, using a jerry-rigged protractor, is inside of the outer image. Third marking is center disc of the sculpture. First cutting of sculpture, using bandsaw with metal cutting blade, is the outside circumference. Work stand is used to help keep the copper plate stable as it rotates through the bandsaw. First cutting of sculpture of outside circumference of the outside embrace sliver is complete. Second cutting of sculpture of separating the outside sliver from the earth center disc is complete. With rough cutting of sculpture of outside sliver and center disc complete, can begin to see how sculpture will come together. Another view with the two sculpture elements positioned close to their final position on work table, checking to make sure the elements fit. All the bandsaw cuts are fairly rough. They need to be cleaned first with a grinder, tool on right, and then with a random orbital sander, tool on left. With all sides cleaned, sculpture is positioned on clean work surface to protect copper finish. Also checking position of copper crossbar that will suspend the sculpture. Next step is to drill holes in sliver that will be used to suspend it. Key is to determine where to place hole so that sliver will have correct rotation so that lower tip points upward in best way. Next step is to drill the holes in center disc that will be used to suspend it. Hole placement is just enough inside the outer edge to make sure it will last when suspended over time. The two different elements will have very contrasting finishes to match the concept. Sliver has been very lightly brushed using a high-speed random orbital sander with 320 grit sandpaper. Sliver is suspended using two suspension points that fit final image for this element. It and center disc are suspended using heavy-duty 250-pound monofilament quotes fishing line that is durable and almost invisible. Both sliver and center disc are test suspended using a ceiling-mounted suspension system. Both are suspended using heavy-duty monofilament line. This tests to make sure elements will be correctly positioned. Placing center disc on a heavy steel plate, Disc is heated using large heating tip on an oxyacetylene torch. Most heat at center and close to melting. Continue heating but less and less, rotating outward until about 3 inches from edge. Stop. Remaining color comes from heat flowing to outer edge. Final coloring of center disc goes from scorched at center, out to multicolor in first ring, and finally out to rich reddish copper color on outside ring. Having completed all elements, copper support bar, suspended by 400-pound line, is suspended from ceiling suspension system. 2 primary elements, embracing sliver and earth disc, are suspended from support bar. Completed sculpture, envision earth embraced, sustained, and thriving. Message: envision earth and all its creatures, embraced with sustained thriving for all, everywhere, for all time. Thrive Sculpture by GChris. Thrive Sculpture can be seen at GChris Studio in Nelson, Wisconsin, and on www.gchris.com.